The following podcast may be disturbing to those who support hatred, terrorism, anti-Semitism, and discrimination. Viewer discretion is advised.
All right, everyone, welcome to this very, very special 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗀 podcast. It's very special for a number of reasons. One is that we are finally doing our podcast interviews in person, not just on Zoom, even though this is going live to you on Zoom and live on Facebook, but we also have our amazing guest here in our studio, in our office, none other than Yoseph Haddad. Welcome, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Our pleasure. For those of you that don't know Yosef, if there are such people, Yosef is, you are literally one of the leading voices in the Arab-Israeli community. One of the most, I think, inspiring and courageous voices in a time and age when it's not so easy. And we know the challenges, we know the threats, also the personal threats, but you are out there, you are speaking out for the truth, fighting for the truth, and that is something that is really quite incredible, quite courageous. And I know you're a role model also for many in the broader Israeli society, not just the Arab-Israeli community, but I'd say the broader Israeli society as well, which is something so crucial and so important. Now, Yosef, you were born in Haifa, but raised in Nazareth, where he insists is the best knafe in the country.
We haven't tested it yet.
We haven't tasted it yet.
I insist, it is.
Yosef and I agree on 99.9% of things. We may have to disagree on this, but that remains to be seen. But at 18, he enlisted voluntarily, and that's important, in the IDF, where he was also an officer in Golani, as an officer in one of the top combat units in the country. And just before you finished your service, the Second Lebanon War broke out in 2006, where you were injured, seriously injured. It took some time, I know, for you to recover. Thankfully, you are at full capacity.
Hurts, but at full capacity.
Hurts, but at full capacity. But what has been really so truly inspiring is that since then you've really devoted your life, your career to fighting for Israel, for the Arab-Israeli community, to sharing the truth about this country, which, as we know, is so often maligned and distorted in the international community, in the press, and elsewhere. You've been literally indefatigable in taking on the haters and taking on the boycotters and the liars and those who seek to cast all sorts of dispersions on Israel. And we'll talk about that specifically, what you've done in the field to combat the Israel Apartheid slur, which is something I know you've been very, very active in. And certainly last but not least, one of the other, I think, very inspiring things about you is you started this organization, 𝗏ouch for each other. Together, 𝗏ouch for each other, trying to bring the Arab-Israeli community also into the mainstream Israeli society, to bring that perspective, to bring sort of that kind of unity to the broader country, which is so important. But certainly last but not least, I say that again, Mazel Tov, my book. You today were recognized one of the top 20 Israelis on Twitter, but the first Arab Israeli on that list. So that's really fantastic achievement, and it's so much.
It's fantastic achievement. I don't really care about the fact that it's top 20, but the fact is that my voice and the voice of the people that I represent is heard. And when it's top 20 alongside prime ministers and other influencers, former prime ministers and influencers, this is something important, because that voice must be heard, and I'm very happy that the Israeli society is giving me that opportunity. Hopefully, we will keep forward and even reaching the top.
I mean, we'll speak about that later, because so much of the fight for the truth, the fight for Israel, this war of narratives is happening online as well. I know you're very, very active on that in all the different platforms, on your videos, which are highly educational, on Twitter and Facebook and the other digital platforms. But we don't have a lot of time, and I want to get to the critical issues first. What does make a really good knafe? First of all.
Very simple. When you arrive to Nazareth, you understand the touch of the little bit of a sugar, a little bit of pistachio, the sweet sauce. That's what makes an amazing knafe. Will you come visit me in Nazareth?
Will you take me?
100%.
It's on record now. On record.
We Arabs, we don't just say اتفضل, welcome. We mean it.
Done. That's a deal. Everyone's watching. On a serious note, I mentioned in the beginning that you enlisted in the IDF when you were 18.
Yeah.
Now, as an Arab Israeli, you do not have to enlist.
Correct.
But you did.
Yeah.
And only that, you enlisted in one of the most sought after combat divisions. What was the catalyst for that? Why did you do that? Why did you feel it was so important for you to do that?
What's the initial of the Israeli army? How do you call what's
IDF?
IDF. It's not the JDF, right? IDF, it's an Israeli defense force. It's not a Jewish defense force. And in Israel, there's about 20% of the population are Israeli Arabs. And when the IDF fights terrorist organizations like Hamas, Hezbollah, certainly what's going on in Iran, they fight to keep all the Israeli society safe, including the Arabs. In my vision, I really hope that in the future, when I say the Israeli society, I don't have to actually explain and say both the Arabs and the Jews. I just want to say Israeli society, because everybody will be, understanding that it is including the Arabs and the Jews together. So for me, growing up with I like to say the tapestry of the Israeli society. I had Jewish friends, both secular and religion, Arab friends from Muslims, Christians, and Druze. And when I grew up like this in Haifa, and it's very important that you stated that I was born in Haifa. I was raised in Nazareth, but all my childhood, I remember that I used to finish my homework as fast as possible, just literally take a bus from Nazareth to Haifa, which back then it was like literally 25 minutes. Today with the traffic, it's like about 25 hours. So I remember that going there, the rest of my family and friends were there, and we used to play football. That's what connected us, all of us, the Jews and the Arabs all together. And time by time, we understand that we have a little bit much more than just football. So we started hanging out and going out together and visiting each other in holidays, Christmas, Eid al-Adha, and Passover as well. I always joke about the fact that since I became in the recent years a public figure and people inviting me Passover, except the year with the Corona, I always joke about it that when we're in the Seder, Shulchan Seder, and they're singing echad. So you guys are very, very smart to sing up until number 10, but from 11, 12, and 13, you're stuck. So there it goes, like the Arab guy at the table, starts saying, guys, 11, 𝗁, 12, 𝗫.
So you're leading the side.
I'm literally
you're leading the side.
What I mean is that when I literally grew up in a society.
Haifa, it's a beacon of coexistence.
It's the biggest.
Jews, Arabs, Christians, Muslims.
It's the biggest mixed city in Israel. And the way I grew up, I literally saw the potential of the Israeli society. And by the way, this is something that also led me to volunteer to the IDF. And not only to volunteer to the IDF, but actually to go and be at the Golani Brigade, which is why the Golani Brigade? It's because, one, it's the best brigade in IDF. If anybody says different, I'm gonna close. And I always say that the second thing is because only crazy people accepted the Golani, and I'm crazy.
Good kind of crazy.
So basically, that's. I went there because I wanted to serve my country and I wanted to serve my society, both the Arabs and the Jews. Again,
when someone says, "Who is Yoseph Haddad?" What is your response? Are you Israeli? Are you Arab Israeli? Are you Christian Arab Israeli? Well, how do you define yourself?
I'm a proud Arab and I'm a proud Israeli. Point. This is who I am. there is no contradiction between being an Arab and an Israeli. And I'm literally a living proof of that. I'm not saying it's easy. And I'm not saying that there's not obstacles and things that we need to work for better future for our society and our country. But eventually, Israel can exist as a Jewish and democratic state, and I can exist as an Arab and Israeli at the same time, and I'm proud of both of them. And I say it everywhere. I can say it right now here in English. I say it to guys in Tel Aviv or in Jerusalem or in 𝗵الفحم and 𝗬 in Arabic. I'm saying it everywhere because I want people to understand that I don't forget where I come from, but I also know exactly that this is my country, and I just wanna be part. And we have the possibility. The absolute majority of the Israeli society, both from the Arab and the Jewish, want that to happen. That's as simple as it is.
I want to ask you, it's something that's incredibly powerful for me. You and I sitting here together, and we, even though we have, I think, share very similar values, I would suggest, we come from completely different perspectives. You, an Arab Israeli, was born here. My family comes, last few generations from Europe. I grew up in Australia, and I made Aliyah to Israel because I consider myself a Zionist. That's what drove me here. You know, I consider this also my homeland and also my people, all of them. You know, that's what drove me here. The sort of the belief in Zionism as the overarching principle is the Jewish people's right to self-determination in our ancestral homeland, but also in accordance with the principles of Israel's Declaration of Independence and the democratic principles. When you hear Zionism, which today, you know, as I said, for me, it's a very, I think for many Jews, a very powerful, very uplifting concept. But today it's been maligned in so many ways and portrayed as something that's inherently racist.
It's not only.
How do you look at Zionism from your perspective?
First of all, let me clarify something very, very important. I'm not a Zionist. I actually don't believe an Arab can be a Zionist. Especially the fact is that if you go back in history and ask the Zionist movement targeted whom, why it was actually why Zionist movement came into this world, who they targeted. They never targeted. So I was born here. So the target was always Jews, not an Arab. Now later in history, even Zionism became an equal to Judaism. So if you call me an Arab Zionist, you're actually calling me, despite the fact that it's not the right definition, but because of that, the way you're thinking today, is you're actually calling me an Arab Jews. So for me, I'm not a Zionist, but what I am, as I said, I'm proud Israeli and I'm proud Arab. People obviously call me also Zionist. So I tell them, if I love my country, I'm a Zionist, then call me Zionist. If this is what you want. They can categorize me also different categories. People think that I belong to the left wing of the political map here in Israel. Someone says that I'm on the right. Someone calls me an Arab, someone calls me an Israeli. Some of them calls me even a Jew. If anyone wants to categorize me in any category, go ahead. I know who I am. And we've been saying that, I think this is like 1,000 times. I know. Proud Arab, proud Israeli. I'll do my best to represent my society. I'll do my best to do everything for my Arab society and the Israeli society and my country. This is how I look at it.
Amazing. I wanted to ask you,
by the way, I have to go back.
Yeah.
I have to go back for your question about the IDF. Important thing. One of the reasons also why, when I spoke about the IDF, you know, defending Israel and at the same time defending the Arabs, both the Arabs and the Jews. Look, we've seen that. We've seen that by the last battle between Hamas and Israel, when Hamas rockets really didn't care where they fell down. You know, it's not that they have a chip and they say, okay, this is an Arab village, we're gonna do like a detour and go to a Jewish town or something like this. And we've seen that a father and a daughter were killed by Hamas rockets. If you go back to the Second Lebanon War,
so the Hamas rockets falling in Gaza and killing Gazans. Let's not forget.
So the last statistic says that more than 40 kids were killed by Hamas rockets. 40 kids killed by their own rockets. If you go back to Lebanon, I remember my friend calling me just before I entered the 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗀. He says, Yosef, how do you feel going into Lebanon fighting your Arab brothers? And I'm like, I'm not fighting my Arab brothers. I'm fighting Hezbollah organization, a terrorist organization. So this is how the conversation ended. Only after he came to the hospital to visit me, he said, I literally understand. What are you talking about? Finally. And the reason is because 44 civilians were killed during the Second Lebanon War. Half of them were Israeli Arab Muslims. So on my city, Nazareth, rockets fell down, killing babies, injuring dozens of people. So when I was there, I was fighting for my society. And I found fighting for also my city, Nazareth. And the people who were killed by this terrorist organization, both Jews and Arabs. I even go further than that. 1 month before I started my service in 2003, I started my service in the IDF on the 16th of November 2003. At the 4th of October 2003, it's a month and a half, a female suicide bomber came into the Maxim restaurant in Haifa. She blew up the restaurant, ended up killing 21 innocent civilians, both Arabs and Jews. And then you realize terrorism doesn't really care and discriminate faith. It's if you're an Israeli, it doesn't matter if you're an Arab or a Jew, you are a target. So when people ask me why I decided, it's for those exact reasons. And you know what? Despite the fact that I was injured, take me back again to that time and tell me you have a junction here, knowing the fact that you're gonna be injured and all this, would you still take the same decision? I'll tell you, I'm all in.
Do you consider yourself unique in that case?
So back then in 2003, definitely. In 2003, we must understand, you can count on even one hand the amount of Arabs who served in the army. Today, there is almost, or even more than 1,000 Arab Israeli fighters in the IDF. That's a huge increase. Just a couple of weeks ago, one of them contacted me and he said, listen, I was accepted to become an officer, to go to the course. And I'm like, you know what? Let's write about it. And everybody was so happy and encouraging him and giving him such a positive feedback. Not only that, put aside the IDF, there's something called the National Service, where you serve the country in police departments, fire departments, paramedics and medics, special hospitals, special schools, all that. 10 years ago, we were talking about barely 200 volunteers from the Arab society yearly. Today, 2021, there is more than 5,500 Arab Israelis volunteering to the National Service yearly. Do you understand what that means? It means within the next, and by the way, this number growing from year to year.
What do you put the change down to?
For that, just to give you like a glimpse of what that means. 10 years from now, there will be tens of thousands of Israeli Arabs who served the country. This is huge. And if I need to put my finger on something, it's because everyone is realizing that the key to the partnership or to the Israeli society, or one of the signs or symbols of our organization together for each other is those two hands are coming like this. And usually you'll see me talking a lot about this together, partnership, cooperation. And one of the things for the Israeli Arabs that they are realizing day by day is part of it is actually to volunteer and contribute something to the Israeli society. What's so cool about the National Service is that you literally can do that also in your community, which means that at the same time you're contributing and volunteering to the country, and you're also doing it for your own society. And this is a win-win situation for the Israeli Arabs. And yes, there's also benefits that comes with serving the country, which is amazing. I can tell you a story about someone who served and volunteered in the National Service. And when she went to a job interview and ended up head-to-head with someone who didn't do a National Service, they picked her. This is something that I like, I promote. And I believe that eventually we need to put our efforts in the National Service. I served in the IDF. I am a disabled veteran of the IDF. Anyone who wants to volunteer to the IDF, I'll support. But if you're talking about what is my goal is to focus on the national service. I think as a public figure, as the CEO of 𝗬𝗿𝗄𝗏 for each other, I always try to find the middle solution. Not extreme to here, not extreme to there. And the middle solution is definitely the national service.
You've just portrayed this incredible picture of the immense contribution of the Arab society within Israel in all sectors, and there's others, whether it's in the Knesset, in medicine, education, national service, and IDF. This incredible picture of Arab Israelis with the Jewish Israelis, with Christian Israelis, Druze Israelis, and so on.
I have to correct this.
Yes.
Arab Israelis is Muslims, Christians, and Jews all together. At least this is how I see it. That's the Israeli Arab society.
Noted. But yet we see this picture of Israel that is increasingly coming out, this almost pervasive discourse, this vilification of Israel, portrayal in recent, especially in the recent months, but in the recent years, as the A word, the apartheid word that we won't tell anyone. That Israel is an apartheid state, or it's engaging in apartheid practices, whether that is happening here within Israel, or whether that is supposedly Israel is inflicting upon Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. What do you, Yoseph Haddad, say to those who claim that Israel is engaging in apartheid services, in apartheid actions? What do you say? What's your response?
Can I say bullshit?
Well, you can say what you want.
Oh, I'm joking about this. Can I say bullshit? It is huge bullshit. But let's focus on the real and serious answer. Anyone who claims that Israel is an apartheid country, it's either he is lying and trying to twist the facts, or he's ignorant because he doesn't really know what the definition of apartheid is. Because if he knew the definition of apartheid, just as the people who are calling Israel doing genocide and ethnic cleansing towards the Palestinian society and people, then he doesn't know what ethnic cleansing is or genocide is. Genocide is what the Jews went through in Europe. That's genocide. But when your society is increasing, your population is increasing day by day, you can't call it.
Is it coming, you think, more out of ignorance and naivety, or out of willful malicious?
So this is the thing. So some people, they are misled and they are ignorant. It comes out as like a little bit condescending, but it is. This is the fact. But the majority of those people, they exactly know what they're doing, and they just want to set their agenda, their cheap agenda, actually. Because I always say that I visited South Africa.
You were there a couple of years ago.
Literally, yeah, exactly a year ago, actually. Okay. During the Apartheid Week, Israeli Apartheid Week that the BDS, launched there. And I've spoken to the Black community in South Africa. And part of my lecture, after I analyzed what's going on in the Israeli society, I've analyzed what's going on in Gaza and what's going on in the West Bank. We can definitely talk about it as well. At the end of it, after I gave them the facts and everything, I finished my lecture by saying, comparing the South African apartheid to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is actually doing injustice to the real people who suffered from real apartheid here in South Africa. I spoke to about 99% of the audience were from the Black community in South Africa. I didn't even saw one head nodding like this. Everybody accepted this sentence where I said it, and they realized that they're doing injustice by using this word. They want to use a different word. They want to say that there is problems, that the Palestinians have problem, they have problem, that, fine, we can talk about it. Actually, I'll respect them more, and then instead of just saying how ignorant they are and how idiot they are, maybe we can sit down and actually find solutions for those problems. But when you come and you try to set up your agenda like this, it's populism, just keep it.
Where do you think this is being driven from? We know there's a number of so-called NGOs and human rights organizations, the UN and others.
𝗵𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀, breaking the silence as well. It's also from here. Obviously, you've seen and you heard the squad. I mean, come on. You are a Congress.
You responded to in a tweet that went viral now where one of the members of Congress, Alexandra Cortez, wrote about apartheid. You called her out.
Listen. She had you search online. You'd see that she's saying, "I have no idea about the geopolitics, geographic, whatever it is on there. I'm not expert in that. If you're not expert in that, shut up." Shut up. If you're not expert on that, don't talk. If you don't know, if I don't know anything, any subject, I wouldn't just talk. I would just okay, I'll learn it. And only if I feel confident enough that I learned enough and have good information about it, then I would talk. But when you have no idea what's going on and you're just mumbling about it, shut up. That, if I can give her an advice, because she's doing a mistake by mistake and she's calling Israel apartheid while she has no idea what's going on. Rashida Tlaib, I mean, she called herself a Palestinian native living in America. What she is doing in America, inciting and rising because of that, the anti-Semitic actions against Jews in the States also affects here what's going on in Israel and in the Palestinian territories. She doesn't understand that she's making it worse. She's not helping. She's actually damaging this conflict and actually helping to make it wider and deeper. So to those people, I mean, if you really care about Palestinian people, you're literally just doing the opposite, unfortunately.
You had a very interesting experience at the Knesset a few days ago, and this, I think, to me, in so many ways, it just underscores the absurdity of the hypocrisy of the argument of Israel being an apartheid state, where you had an Arab Israeli member of Knesset host a session at the Knesset, Israel, home of Israel's parliament, democracy, about Israel being an apartheid state, where they invited someone from Human Rights Watch, who was, by the way, visa was not renewed in Israel because he was engaging in BDS and boycott practices to allege that Israel is apartheid. Omar Shakir, here in the seat of Israel's parliament. That is the most absurd hypocrisy that I've come across. But you tried to speak there, but they shut you down.
No. Listen, it's not that I tried to speak there. The first part was that I was denied from entering. The only problem is...
you also have a press credential.
So what happened is, I was in the list as a speaker, as the CEO of Together Vouch for Each Other, an Arab-Israeli organization that wants to come and, say what I wanted to say about this situation and this conference. What happened is that they deleted my name, prevented me, thinking that they're going to prevent me from coming in. What they didn't realize is that I have a press ID, which allows me also to go. Despite that fact, they didn't allow me to go in for about an hour and a half. Only when two members of the Knesset threatened to file a complaint to the Knesset in order to check what's going on, only then they allowed me to go in. But they kept warning me. If you say one sentence, not even one sentence, one word, we're going to kick you out. This is not even like, that's living in a dictator regime. This is like, again, I can't say apartheid because, again, I'll be using the definition of apartheid just to my own interest, which I, by the way, also did, just, to keep them back at the same, the way they using it. But the fact is that they literally acted like North Korea. And I couldn't stay silent. And I said, by the way, when I stood up, I knew immediately that I will be, taken out because they warned me not to say anything. So when I stood up, I said, I'm going out, but guys, you are the real apartheid. Obviously, what I meant is by telling them that they're hypocrite, that they're using their power to shut me and not to listen to what I have to say, because they are afraid of what I have to say, because they know that I will contradict every single accusation that they have. So immediately they just took me out, and there was a huge fiesta about it. But if one thing came out good from that is that we exposed their hypocrisy, and every one of them that each and every one of them that will come and now talk about Israel being apartheid. I think the simplest thing is to say that we saw what you did to an Arab Israeli who just thinks otherwise than you guys, and you don't want him to say his words. Last sentence about this matter is, I spoke about it publicly as well. Every day that those guys, Aida Musliman, 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗱𝗀, 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗍, all the joint list political party, every day they're not in power, I thank God, because if by I don't know what world they will be in power, you and me and other who thinks different from them will not have the opportunity to speak out, and this country will not be a democratic country, it will be a dictatorship. So I thank God for that.
I want to ask you, you have an incredible platform and seemingly endless courage in taking on the accusers in wherever the charges are being made, whether here in Israel, in South Africa, around the world. But the allegation that Israel is engaging in these practices is raging, certainly on campuses, not just in North America, but we're seeing in Europe. What would you say, what advice would you give, especially say to a young person, to a student who is faced with this, who's faced with Israel Apartheid Week events on campus, or faced with these accusations on their Instagram or in their schools? What do you recommend to them as a student, as a regular person? How do they respond? What do they do?
I'll tell them exactly what I do. When I go to speak around, campuses in the US, Europe, South Africa, South America, even here in Israel, your audience and students as well, and everywhere, they are divided to 3 different categories. The categories are those who are anti-Israelis, those who are in the 50-50, which they haven't made up their mind, and those who are pro-Israelis. What I would say is, first of all, learn your audience, or learn the friends and the students and and put them in each box, let's say. Those who you categorize as pro-Israelis actually encourage each other. Talk about how you can refute claims and lies and twisted facts, and let it just encourage each other. Those who are in the 50-50, this is, by the way, the main group of people. Those are the most important ones, because they haven't made up their mind where they want to be, whether they're going to shift towards, BDS movements and anti-Israeli activism, or they're going to be like, okay, we understand Israel is the right, we want to be on the right side, which is Israel. Those are most important. So when you actually spot them and understand that those are in this category, it's very important to come with them with facts. I always say, whatever you say, same like about here, I back my words with facts. And if there's anything that I said during the last session here that you think that I said it and it's not correct, I urge you to come and face me. I have facts for everything that I said. So when you have that, and when you speak with those group calmly and respectfully, this is the easiest way to shift them. And as for the last group, we need to be realistic, okay? Some of them have been brainwashed, some of them didn't really care about whether Israel is this or whether Israel is that, whether the Israeli Arabs, live in equal rights. Yes, there is problems. Yes, I'm not saying that also me as an Israeli Arab, like everything is perfect, though. We have problems, and there is racism, and we need to fix it. By the way, unfortunately, there is not even one society in the world that you can say there's no racism. And when I say there's racism, it's not just between Jews and Arabs. It's between Jews and Arabs and Arabs. But eventually, so those type of groups, the anti-Israelis, the BDS, activists, and all this, they don't really care. But when I go and deal with them, I go on one purpose, is to shake them a little bit and make them ask questions and ask them, whether they are on the right side or not, but not having hopes that, okay, I'm going to shift those, because as I said, the main group of people is the 50-50. The way I deal with them, and this is important for everyone to realize, to understand, I'm not apologetic. I'm not a good, nice person. You say, he comes and says, "You killed babies." I'm like, yes, I'll understand. I'm gonna hear you I'm gonna let you finish your sentence, and then I'm gonna reply. No. With those type of people, I attack back, not violently, physically or verbally.
With words.
I'm attacking back with words.
Words and facts.
And exactly, this is the second thing. When I attack back, I immediately back my words with facts. And one of also the most important advice that I can give is this specific type of people like to criticize Israel. Now, if they are wrong, then attack back and show the facts. But they sometimes, not a lot of times, sometimes they actually criticize Israel, and they have, I can say that, yeah, they're right. The last thing that you want to do is lie or refute that in a way that try to dodge that and not to address that. No, address that. To everything there is solution. And if I can say that if you don't know the solution, listen, I'm available on my social platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can send me private messages and ask me, listen, some people claim that Israel this and this and this. Is that right? Is that? I can help. We can help. We actually, you as well. So if you are in a way that you're hesitated about something, you can definitely try to talk to people who have a little bit of knowledge and more knowledge and experience about it. And I recommend also this guy.
I just repost what he says. Speaking of social media, I mean, I did want to, perhaps we can end with that because I know there's not a lot of time left.
We can do a second part.
If you want to see a if you want to see a sequel, please comment and share now. But we're talking about this war of narratives. We're talking about fighting for the truth, exposing the lies, showing the real face of Israel. And I think this is happening on so many different battlefronts, not only on the ground, not only in the courts, and campuses, and media and diplomatic arena, but it's happening also in the digital realm. It's happening online. And today it's, I think, become one of the most vicious platforms with such unfiltered hatred and pure anti-Semitism. But it also, in some ways, I think also provides us with an incredible platform to not just correct the lies and the mistruths, but to really go on the offense and also use the opportunity to convey a positive narrative of the truth and what we stand for and what we believe. How do you see this this online battle? How heated is it? How much flack do you cop, for example, online in terms of your advocacy? And again, likewise, what advice would you give specifically in the social media realm?
Okay, so it's very simple. Realistically, or should I say, I always go and try to be realistic. And we need to understand that when you go to social media, they already have the advantage in the numbers. Those who are trolls, those who are anti-Israelis, they have no idea why they're anti-Israelis. They're just like tweeting or posting or sharing this and sharing that. For me, when I come to use my social media platforms, all of them, which I'm very happy and thankful that
we'll post, by the way, all of his media platforms, which if you're not following yet, follow now.
So I'm very thankful that the followers are very engaging and they spread that message as much as possible. I think during the war against the terrorist organization Hamas, some of my posts and tweets, they reached millions of people, which is a huge honor. And because of that, I also got comments from the Arab world sending me messages and said, listen, you changed us. You showed us something that we didn't realize. And that's only because we managed to somehow arrive to your Facebook page, because everybody's talking about this Arab guy who's speaking about Israel. And if you want a different point of view. And what I'm trying to say here is that despite the fact that we see that we're outnumbered and that there's a lot of racism and anti-Semitism and especially like people just like to curse and to use this platform to be really obnoxious. I want to tell you guys that sometimes you have no idea how can you affect even one message or one share, one comment that could affect someone. And this person has a family and friends, and it's sort of a chain that you grow up. It's kind of like when I remember I came to lecture in one of the universities, and because of a traffic problem, only 4 people came to the lecture. And the guy asked me, the event planner says, do you want to cancel? And I said, no way, because those 4 people, they have friends, they have families. They're not 4 people. They are 20, 30, maybe 100. And if I can change, if I can strengthen them, if they are pro-Israelis, then great. And if they're not pro-Israelis, and if they're in the 50-50 category, and I can change their opinion or help their opinion, and help them to see and realize a bit about Israel, and then they can go and talk about it, then that's a win. That's something that satisfies you. Same thing on the social media platforms. Never give up, and don't think that, oh my God, I'm one person, I have like 100 followers and that's it. No, this 100 followers can grow up and they can actually spread what you have to say to other people. And for those who sense hateful and curses and stuff like this towards me, towards anyone else, haters will be everywhere. It's not just on social media. You can see it even day to day. And this makes them go nuts. I just don't really respond to them, or I respond with a sarcastic comment, but not really going into do debate or cursing them back. That drives them nuts. The fact is that someone sent me a message and start cursing me, and I'm like, what am I cursing, dude? Let's stop. And he's like, no.
Literally, but they don't want to talk.
But see, the thing is that, yes, some of them don't. But if you manage to catch this one who wants eventually to talk, then you did a huge change. That's exactly what happened to me. He's cursing me, and I'm like responding and listen, let's talk, not cursing. And then he asks a question, yet he curses, and then he say, and then he writes, why are you not answering? I said, you're cursing me. Why should I answer? And then suddenly there's a change. Okay, I'm not gonna curse. Answer the question. And then I answer, and he says like, okay, I didn't realize that. Elaborate on that. At the end of it, he goes like, I learned a few things that I had no idea about. Now, remember, I always back my words with facts, and I actually have a screenshot of that conversation. That's why, when you talk about something, be confident about it, and if someone comes, okay, show us this, no problem, I can show that. So this is what I want to say. Be positive. I know that on social media, usually you think that the bad and the negative, that's what brings rating. You know what? Go to my social media platforms. You will see that I'm actually a living proof of how positive brings even more rating. And I'm happy that this is how I see my work, as positive work, positive messages, and trying to change people's perspective on us, on this radio Arab society, both Jews and Arabs, and abroad, and it's working. We're moving forward all the time.
It is, Yosef. I couldn't imagine a better way to end this. You are an incredible source of inspiration.
Thank you.
What you do, as I said, it's not easy, but you spoke about bringing positivity and bringing truth, and I would add being a beacon of light as well, and hope to so many within the broader Israeli community. And the fact that you're not afraid to go out wherever it is to speak the simple truth, and that's it. That's all we can ask for. So you're an amazing role model. I'm proud to call you a friend as well, not just a partner in this battle. So certainly from my personal capacity and on behalf of the International Legal Forum, thank you so much for coming on our interview, for speaking the truth, for sharing the truth, and for inspiring so many in what you do. Yosef, thank you, my friend.
It was a pleasure. Pleasure.